No, that's better. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 8 Sanchi Go Roku. Fuck. How about English? Welcome to episode 8 of the Hey Kerwin show. 8 is actually my lucky number. It is the number that never ends. It is like the ring that continues to prosper. I don't know where that comes from.
Rodney Hurst on YouTube, he says, "Hey Kerwin, what can you tell me about startup capital? Is it better to take a loan or find an investor?"
Great question, Rodney. There's 3 types of capital. I'm going to keep it really simple. There's what I'd call dumb capital, smart capital, and smart connected capital. So the last 2 really fall into the investors, but when it comes to the dumb capital I refer to, friends, family, fools, anyone that is able to give you money based on the situation you're in. Banks are very popular, especially for startups to get access to money, but the challenge that you have with many banks is oftentimes when they give you cash or when they give you capital, it comes with a lot of caveats that are within those contracts, meaning that if the business doesn't perform at a certain level, if you're not hitting certain numbers, certain margins, that they can actually come in and essentially foreclose on any of the assets that you're using for security. And that's the second biggest challenge with getting access to funds from a bank. In most cases, they're going to want security. Unless it's a personal loan, maybe sub $10,000 or sub $20,000, you might be able to get access to funding from a bank, or maybe you have a line of credit already set up on a house or a property, or a credit card that you might be able to get access to. But when it comes to just a basic business loan, it's going to be fairly difficult depending on the market that you're in, depending on the credit criteria, the credit restrictions at the time. But if you are able to get a significant investment from a bank or a significant loan from a bank, I'm talking, let's say $50, $100, $150, $200,000 plus, in 99% of situations, unless you got kissed on the dick by a fairy, you're going to require your assets to be held as security, which means, as I said, if anything happens in the business, if let's say it's your house is essentially up for grabs for the bank. So unless you're on a sure thing or unless you know what you're going to do is going to be very successful, I have never actually funded from a bank. Because of those restrictions and those rules. I've just never felt confident putting other assets on the line when I've been really going to launch and start businesses. However, the second types of capital, and actually I'm going to talk about a fourth type of capital as well, is smart capital. Now, smart capital is typically angel investment, can be VC or early stage seed investment. Smart capital is essentially where you go to get investment from someone. Now, that investment could be in the form of equity, meaning that they become an owner in your business, or it could be in the form of debt. You can actually get debt as a form of investment. So if someone is loaning you money based on debt, you're probably going to have to give them an above average interest rate. I think the going rate for a credit card right now is 11 or 12%. Okay, so that's where it's going to be a starting point, for investor capital if it's being lent based on a debt criteria or a debt instrument. But you might end up paying, if you're actually getting investment from an investor based on a debt instrument, you could be paying anywhere between 10, 20, 30, up to 40%. And that's pretty intense. But the beautiful part is, if you've got a really strong cash flow, you can pay that money back very quickly. They get their 40% net over the 3, 6, 12 months or however long the period of the debt is laid out. But once you extinguish the debt, you then retain full ownership of your baby. Now, when we look at equity, and this is where a lot of people get this story completely wrong and think, I don't want investors because I don't want to lose control. Now, there's 2 things you need to understand. First of all, someone actually needs to have a controlling stake in your company to be able to tell you what to do. Secondly, you can actually issue shares. If you're going to be selling a major portion of your company, you can actually decide intelligently what type of shares that you can issue. You can actually issue more than 50% of equity in your company to an investor, but you might issue them a portion of non-voting shares, which means as long as you hold the greatest proportion of the voting shares. Mark Zuckerberg is a perfect example. He only owns, crap, don't hold me to this, but I think it's somewhere between 18 to 26% of Facebook. That's his actual equity stake. But he owns 56% of the voting rights in Stakebook. It's a nice little caption there. So as a result, I honestly believe that he set that deal up based on the mistakes that other people have made before him. Steve Jobs is a perfect example. He got voted out of his own company because although he was the founder, although he started that company with Woz, it got to the point where the board was actually able to oust him out because they had a bigger vote than he did, which was able to get him out of the company. So you don't necessarily have to give up control of your company when you're taking investment, even beyond what would be considered like the controlling stake. As long as you maintain the controlling voting shares within the company that you're raising capital for, You're not going to have any problems with someone trying to tell you what to do. But you've also got to understand an investor doesn't necessarily want to tell you what to do in your business. That's not an investor's job. An investor's job is to find things that he can put his money into so that the money can go to work. But the reason I say we're looking for smart money, okay, is what I'm looking for an investor, with anything that I'm looking for an investment in, whether it be for clients, businesses, or funds that I'm working on, or deals that I'm working on, I'm looking for someone that can bring not only money to the table, but that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's probably the least most important thing. The thing that I'm looking for before we even get to the money conversation is, do they actually have some smarts? Do they have some intelligence that they can actually give to me and provide to me that's going to add value beyond just the capital? Because otherwise, capital's capital. Capital's just capital. It's money. It's there. It's sitting there. You can use it, okay, to grow the business. But there's nothing better than getting smart capital. Capital that comes with really nice strings attached. And the strings that I'm referring to are intelligence, it's experience, it's insights. I'm ideally looking for someone who's got extended levels of experience in that particular industry or that business or that type of business, so that they can not only give me their money, because once they've given me their money, they're invested. And now it's going to be worth their while to share with me their knowledge and experience. It's almost like, think of it this way. Smart capital is like getting an investor to pay you to mentor you. Think of it that way. That's fucking cool, right? Why wouldn't you want to do that? But oftentimes people think, well, if I give away shares of my company, I'm going to lose control. But here's the thing, you can only give away a share once. And once you've given it away, you can't give it away again. So you've got to be really, really smart with how you do allocate shares and who you do allocate shares to in the early stages of investment. However, the third type of capital is what I call smart connected capital. And that's someone who is not only smart and has got experience, but they've also got demonstrated connections that they can bring to the table. So they're not only bringing capital to the table, they're also bringing intelligence and experience to the table. But best of all, they're bringing connections. And connections, oh my God, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Your net worth will be a reflection of your network. And when someone comes to the table who has money, experience, and a network, that's the kind of stuff that can blow a business up overnight. And I'm talking in very short periods of time. That's how you can go from a 1 million valuation to a 20 mil valuation based on increase in revenue super, super quick, because you get an investor who comes in, he goes, oh, by the way, I know a dude over here, and they'll order, you're selling what, 200 units a month? I know a dude over here that basically uses 2,000 units a month. He's a good friend of mine. Why don't I just refer the business this way? We'll do him a little bit of a deal because there's a relationship there, and boom, your business explodes. Okay, same rules apply. Whenever you're getting smart capital, smart connected capital, you want to make sure that obviously you're not giving away a controlling stake. You want to make sure that you're giving away a stake that is, enough for that to warrant their attention and their time. Because some people think, well, I'll just sell them 2%. An investor is not going to be motivated to fucking help you for 2% of your company. It's just not going to happen. And even at 5%, they're probably not going to be really that interested. I would be saying at a minimum, if you're looking at a key investor or a lead investor, you'd be looking to you'd be looking to sell or apportion a minimum of 10% or more. And obviously understanding that as the business grows and as you start to distribute more shares, there might be a level of dilution involved on that equity, but you want to make it, especially if it's a lead investor. As I said, I'm not just saying have they got money, are they smart, have they got experience, are they connected, okay, can they actually open doors that can create significant uplifts in revenue really fast? And do they actually have the capital as well? But do they have enough capital so that if the capital they give you, they're not going to be sitting there freaking out every night going, oh my God, is this guy going to lose my money? And that's the difference between an investor and someone who's just pretending to be an investor. And there's a lot of people who are pretending to be investors. They're calling themselves angel investors or VCs, and they're basically taking money out of their mortgage to fucking loan to small businesses in the hope and the dream that that business might succeed. And that's not the type of investor that you want. You want an investor that's going to give you the runway to do what you want. You don't want someone who's going to be ringing you every day saying, how are we going, how are we going, how are we going, how are we going? Because that's just going to be fucking annoying. Now, do we talk about the fourth type of capital? The fourth type of capital, which is my favorite, which is the one that I go to every single time, fucking sales. Sell something, generate cash flow, prove that your business, your product, your service actually can work. Because here's the thing, even if you are looking for capital and you have no sales, you're going to be so unattractive. You're going to be like, you're going to be like the ugly duckling at the ball. No one's going to ask you to dance, okay, if you've got a face full of smash hammers. We've got to make sure that the business that we take, when we're at that stage, when we're looking for investment, legit investment, we're actually not just going, I've got an idea for a great pen. Okay, I haven't got a prototype, but I've got this amazing idea. The idea is worth $2 million and I'm willing to sell you a 5% stake. Okay, no. if you've got a good idea, you need to be able to bootstrap it to the point where you can actually get it so that you've got a product or a service that you can actually sell. And if you can sell that puppy, what are you going to get? You're going to get feedback. Is it good? Is it bad? What needs to change? And you're going to get that before you have capital, not after you have capital. Because if you get the capital first, then you're probably going to overdevelop your product, overdo your service, and waste a lot of money, okay, on not understanding what the market really wants that you wouldn't have wasted if you'd actually tried to bootstrap the thing in the first place and actually tried to give and sell and build and do it yourself when you first got into business. So here's the thing. The reason I love cash, okay, or sales as a funding strategy is because it lets you know if this thing's going to work. And if you can actually get to a point where you are self-funded, oh my God, you're free, which means you're going to be so much more selective. You're going to be able to apply a much higher level of scrutiny to the investors that are coming in because you're not going to be desperate. If you don't have any sales, you'll be fucking desperate. You'll take money from anyone, okay, which is what most people do, and that's how most of these relationships end up bad. Facebook is another great example. He held off taking capital. People were coming to him and begging to give him money. Zuckerberg had people begging, and as a result, he was able to structure shares, he was able to structure equity deals whereby he was giving non-voting shares, non-voting equity to people because they just wanted a piece of the pie. They just wanted to be in on the deal. And the deal was so good, and he was so not needy or undesperate or abundant, I suppose you could say, that he was able to use that strategy. He was able to use, the platform and the success of the platform, even though the success at that point wasn't in revenue, but it was certainly in growth and users and data acquisition, and the potential was there to actually get some of the best deals on the table. You will always get screwed if you don't get sales first, if you go into the investment community, because you're not going to have anything to leverage off that you can prove that this thing has legs. Fund through cash, fund through sales is always the best option. It's always the first option. But if in doubt, you've got those other threes that you can play with. Kapow! Woo! Should I take a breath?
Rodney Hurst must be happy with that one.
Rodney, if you're not fucking happy with that, I want a piece of the action.
Moving on, another YouTube comment. YouTube's showing up.
YouTube in the house. YouTube in the house. Yeah.
Missing Links on YouTube says, hey Kerwin, if you have heaps of interests, all of which could make a difference in the world, how do you decide which ones to follow?
Pick one. Go down that path, try and commercialize it, productize it, servicize it, if that's a word, meaning create a service out of it, create a product out of it, and test, see what the market says. But secondly, just go to the one that you're most excited about. But make sure that that excitement is actually grounded in something rational and something realistic rather than just in the excitement of the optimism that can sometimes intoxicate us when we start a business for the first time. Because sometimes it's optimism that intoxicates us, which is actually really important, because if you weren't intoxicated by this optimism when you started and you knew actually how fucking hard it was going to be, you probably wouldn't start. So let's be honest, the optimism and the intoxication that comes from that is a really important part of the process. But you've just got to try. I did 48 different jobs before I actually worked out what I actually really wanted to fucking do. And even once I worked out what I had to do, I still had to change. It still morphed maybe a half a dozen or a dozen times into different styles, aspects, models, and because I just wanted to find the thing that I loved and then be able to do it in a way that lit me up the most, rather than just, because here's the thing, you can do what you love, but if you do what you love in a way that exhausts you continually, if you do what you love in a way that puts you in front of people that you don't like dealing with, then it doesn't matter how much you love that thing, those other things will erode at your motivation and your psychology, and it will become a self-sabotage. So it's important that you not only try different things, but when you find the thing, then consider, okay, I love this thing, but is this the model that this thing should be operated on? And maybe consider trying different models. But you've got to just start with somewhere. Start with something. But here's what I know. If you try and go, well, I like heaps of things, I'm going to just do heaps of things, it's going to be like having 1 can of water for 20 flowers, and each flower needs 1 can of water a day. You're going to put a little bit of water on every flower, but they're all going to die because you're not going to have enough juice to actually make any one flower thrive, because you're trying to make 20 thrive and you only have the juice to make one thrive.
Beautiful.
Go where the juice is.
Danny Sayers on Facebook. Hey Kerwin, what rituals and habits get you into a peak performance mindset consistently?
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 answers: what I used to do, what the consequences of that were, what I do now, and what the consequences of that are now. A long time ago, I did this seminar that was teaching, some stuff that was related to NLP, and it was talking about the importance of physiology and the importance about getting yourself into a peak state, and then anchoring that peak state into, some form of a physical gesture, so that every time you did it, it would take you back to that state. And it was great, and it's very powerful and very potent, and I still use those anchors today. But what I discovered was, me being the excessive obsessive personality, is every morning after learning how to do this, I would go into the shower and I would jump up and down and I would jump up and down and I'd make my move, until I actually felt the adrenaline kick in. There was like adrenaline kick in, and then I'm like, right, now I can conquer the world. The unintended consequence of that is I collapsed 5 times. I was hospitalized twice with exhaustion because, what the doctors didn't diagnose that, alternative medicine diagnosed not long thereafter is I actually had adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout. So I'd been constantly using adrenaline through, the ritual of, doing what's considered a power move, but I was abusing the drug, if that makes sense. I was doing it so frequently and so often that if I started to feel my adrenaline wane, I would go and jump up and down the corner and boom, boom, boom. Okay, adrenaline's back. And it just really deteriorated me mentally, emotionally, physically specifically, but even spiritually over time, because I started to feel very drained. I was always worn out, and I couldn't understand that I'd have these bursts of energy that were followed by these. It was almost like I was on caffeine. I'd have these highs and these lows, and I wasn't even drinking coffee. So I discovered that works well for some people, but that method just doesn't work well for me. Even backstage now, when people come backstage, they expect to see like an exercise bike or a fucking vibrating thing or a bouncy thing. There's nothing. There's a meditation chair. The way I get myself into peak state is I meditate. If I'm going on the range, like to do any tactical training with weapons, I fucking meditate. If I'm about to go on stage and I want to be peak state, I will meditate. If I'm about to go into a meeting that's really important, I need to have my, my ducks in a row, I'll meditate. My go-to ritual, and Matthias knows this inside out, my go-to ritual to get myself back in line is to meditate. My version of getting into peak performance is actually going down before I go up. So what that means is some people will try and get themselves into a overhyped peak state. They're using the physiology, adrenaline's kicked in, cortisol's kicked in. I said cortisol, so adrenaline, yes, it'll make you strong, it'll make you fast, but cortisol, that stuff will make you stupid. So for me, I much prefer to use peak performance rituals that are more centering, that are more neutral, that are more balanced. Because look at me, I've just walked in, I'm already fucking speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I don't need to be pumped up. I need to be calmed down. And when I calm down, I find when I get pumped up, I maintain really high levels of clarity. But if I'm already pumped up and I try to pump up myself even more, okay, I just experience burnout. I experience tiredness. I experience, like a caffeine effect. And a stupor sometimes from the cortisol that is produced when you amp yourself up on a consistent basis. Now, if you're young and full of beans, you probably don't even know what exhaustion feels like. I remember, oh my God, I still remember like the first time I actually experienced exhaustion. It was in my late 20s. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Is this some kind of affliction or disease? But if you're like, let's call it 15 to 25, you're probably going to be able to pump out all the adrenaline you want, and there's not going to be too many consequences for that, okay? But once you get into your later 20s, your early 30s, that's when you will start to pay the price of a high adrenaline lifestyle, which I know firsthand. So for me, my performance methods, my rituals are always about centering. It's always about getting the psychology, getting the story, but most importantly, just getting the mind clear. And if my mind is clear, I can do anything.
April Sia Dunlop on Facebook says, "Hey Kerwin, how do we avoid people getting offended by difficult conversations without being rude or arrogant?"
Okay, well, first of all, don't be rude or arrogant, because if you are rude or arrogant, either consciously or unconsciously, that's probably going to be offensive. I am notorious for being very direct. I'm notorious for being very blunt. But in what do you think, what percentage of cases do I offend people?
Never.
Almost never. But I could be biased, right? That's why I'm asking you. Like, almost never?
Probably 2% of the time.
2% of the time? Wow, I was going to say 1% of the time. Fuck, am I really that offensive? I am offensive apparently 2% of the time. I'm going to argue that, 1.5% of the time. But that normally happens as a result of, a lack of situational awareness where something has happened. I've given a direction, I've given a direct command, and I thought I'd been really clear. And yet whatever's come back hasn't been in line with the instructions that I've given. And maybe, 2 out of every 100 times or 1.5 out of every 100 times, I might deliver a piece of feedback that might have a little bit of an edge to it. But 98% of the time, I am very direct, very blunt, to the point where if people aren't used to it, they can take them back. But what's interesting is I believe the reason that people take my feedback so well is because there's actually no ego in it. See, when you come and you give someone, if you're being obnoxious, if you're being arrogant and you're trying to, have a difficult conversation, but you're coming from a place of better, you're a high authority in this conversation, that's your ego positioning you on a different plane to someone else. Now, when someone comes in, to talk to you who's better than all-knowing, what is that going to bring out in you? That's going to bring out the same in you. And then that difficult conversation is not going to be a difficult conversation, it's going to be a conflict. Okay, whereas for me, I will come into a conversation whether their ego is up or down, but I'll come in with no ego. I will deliver the feedback, whatever it is, very direct, very blunt, and no emotion. But because there's no ego there, they actually have nothing to resist against because it's just words, okay? There's no attachment to a position, there's no emotional bias. And so when there's nothing to fight against, oftentimes they will come down to your own level where the ego will be released. Doesn't mean that they may not necessarily they might go up before they come down, because sometimes saying something very direct and very honest to someone can be very offensive and confronting depending on how much experience that they have with conversations like this. Now, everyone on my team, this is like Monday. We have these conversations all the time. But if you're doing it in an environment where you perhaps don't have these conversations all the time, there may be a period of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes for everyone just to get their egos in check, everyone to check their ego at the door, everyone just get nice and calm and get very clear on the intent of the conversation is pure, the intent on the outcome is pure. I'm not trying to make you wrong, I'm not trying to make me right. All I'm trying to do is help find a healthy outcome so that we can relate better. But what I do know is I find it far more offensive when someone doesn't tell me the truth than when they do. I so rarely get offended. But when I do get offended, it's when I walk out of a conversation and someone says to me, "Oh, did they tell you about this?" And I say no, and I'm like, "Well, why didn't they tell me about that? Why? What? Because to me, I just don't think anyone should be afraid to speak their mind. I think everyone should speak their mind as long as it's done respectfully and in a kind manner that doesn't make anyone wrong or judge them. And when someone holds back or if someone augments the truth, that to me is offensive. But tough conversations are easy when you check your ego at the door and you just speak honestly and measured. Because I've learned sometimes, this is actually pretty important, when you're having tough conversations, learn when to stop talking. Because sometimes you can get into a routine and a flow and you get the outcome, but then you just think, okay, there's all this vacant space, I'll just keep talking, and it's like sales. Once the deal is done, stop talking. Once the conversation is complete, stop talking. Everyone stands up and goes to their corners or their boxes or wherever they live. Do you live in a box, Matty?
I do.
You do?
I do actually, yeah.
Airbnb box.
$20 a day, yeah.
$20 a day?
Yeah, on the street.
Oh my God. That was episode 8 of the Hey Kerwin show. I actually think that was a pretty fucking good show. So for those of you who would like to get your questions answered, hashtag Hey Kerwin, whether it's be on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or YouTube, use the hashtag Hey Kerwin. Let me know your question, whether it be about life, business, love, spirituality, not about love, spirituality, relationships, not about relationships, food, basically anything. I'm like Doctor, I am not your guru. Oh, question of the day. What is one ritual or one habit, not 10, one ritual or habit that you do to get yourself in a peak performance psychology, in a peak performance state so that you can do whatever it is that you need to do, be whoever it is you need to be to get whatever it is that you need to get. I want proven tactics, not theory. What do you do to get yourself in state? Hashtag Hey Kerwin. This is number 8. Over and out. Chapow!
You got 5 minutes before your next meeting?
Sure.
Oh, no. I mean, you have 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. It wasn't a question. It was a instruction.
Instruction.